sent a message of comfort to the family, acquaintances, and the residents of Garissa County following the death of their Senator Mohamed Yusuf Haji, who was a long-serving provincial administrator and cabinet minister. And President Uhuru Kenyatta said that the death of Senator Haji was a big blow to the country, especially in the Building Bridges Initiative constitutional reform process, where his leadership shall be dearly missed. And also, as you can see in our pictures, those are pictures that are coming through from the Gusii Stadium, where we're going to be having the final funeral service for the late Simeon Nyachae. And continuing with this conversation, and remember that President Kenyatta said Mzee Haji was a steward of the BBI process and a strong pillar of the country's desire to have a cohesive, peaceful, and progressive nation. And getting into conversations about, the late Senator Mohamed Yusuf Haji, who also served as the Minister for Defense. We have got Maj.Rtd Peter Mwathi. Major Mwathi, a very good morning to you. And when the news of this senior gentleman in this country, the late Senator Haji and the late Honorable Nyachae, what's the impact and the legacy that these two have, and considering now that they have passed on?
But Daniel Wahome, let me appreciate that you have recalled me back again to KBC, which is a national media. And let me also take this opportunity, the earliest opportunity, to give my condolences specifically to the family of the Senator Honorable Haji, and also Honorable Nyachae, to the family and to the Kisii community and Garissa people and the country at large, because these senior gentlemen have really contributed a lot to Wahome in terms of delivering public service in this country. They will be remembered for steering the public service administration in this country.
And let's talk about, from your military background, we know about Operation Linda Nchi, and when the late Senator Haji was appointed the Minister for Defense by former President Mwai Kibaki, one of the things he did was that in 2011, he got involved into a task force about how to deal with the Al-Shabaab insurgency, and later ensuring that members of the Kenya Defense Forces were deployed under AMISOM to take care of the situation in Somalia. How much of an impact has that had in the country?
I remember very well, Wahome, I was in service, active service, by the time Senator Haji was given the position of the Assistant Minister in the Defense. He was working at DOD by then, and he contributed a lot in the planning of the entire operation of the Linda Nchi. You remember, Wahome, during that time, the Al-Shabaab was a nuisance along our boundaries. You remember they were taking the tourists away, and they were causing a lot of problems. And we as a country, we had to go and secure the boundaries so that we push them away. And Senator Haji was the Assistant Minister for Defense. He played a great role, because this also had a role with civilians outside there, and he comes from the Somali community. So he played a very, very big role in that operation of the Linda Nchi. We went as a military in Somalia to Linda our country. That's why it was called Linda Nchi.
And you've mentioned something, because it comes from Garissa County, which borders Somalia, and how much of, and you can see, the Somali community, cuts across from, from Kenya all across into the Somalia Republic. How much was done to ensure that, the communities are cohesive? We've got the Dadaab refugee camp also close to Somalia, to ensure that, the skirmishes came to a close.
First of all, Wahome, personally, because I was at DOD by that time, let me say something about Haji, the one I know. He was of a Somali origin, but he was not a tribalist. He was not a tribalist, and I think Kenya will take a long time to get somebody from the Somali origin who never revealed his Somali ethnic issues. He was not a tribalist. That's one I can confirm to the nation.
The other one is his role in the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force. And now he was co-chair of that task force. And the sobriety that we saw him, trying to bring at Bomas during the two, big conferences, two meetings that have been there. How much of a contribution then to the cohesion of the country is needed?
Let me refer you to what I said again. He was not established.
True.
And when he retired from the public service, he went to politics because of his fame in that region of Somali ethnic group. He was elected, isn't it?
Yes, in Ijara.
In Ijara, and he was given this work by the president to steer the BBI. And BBI is a political. It was a political instrument. He had a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure. Everybody wanted his views, party views, to be included here. And when you are preparing a constitution, Wahome, it cannot be 100%. Everybody wants to, and he was working with a timeline. So you can imagine Senator Haji enduring all these political pressures coming from all interested parties in personality and parties. He enjoyed it and wrote this BBI up to where it is now. I think he'll be remembered in the history for pushing BBI. If it goes through, and I'm very optimistic it'll go through, we shall not forget Senator Haji in the history of BBI.
And continuing with that, let me just mention right now at the bottom right of your screen, we've got our sign language interpreter, Lensa Odingo, who has joined us as we see pictures coming from the Gusii Stadium where the funeral service for the late Honorable Simeon Nyachae is going to take place. President Uhuru Kenyatta amongst the mourners who are expected to be there. And as we continue with this conversation, just a quick biography of the late Senator Mohamed Yusuf Haji, born on the 23rd of December 1940 in Garissa County. And for his post-secondary education, he studied at the University of Birmingham, where he majored in management and finance control. Then he joined the public service, the provincial administration, as a district officer, rose through the ranks until he retired when he was as a provincial commissioner before getting into elective politics and serving in the cabinet. From the pictures that we are seeing at the moment, consider Deputy President William Ruto has arrived at the Gusii Stadium, and he has taken his seat amongst the mourners. And we now move on to this, and another issue, public service. And on Thursday, there was the funeral service for the late Simeon Nyachae, and it was in Nairobi. It was held at the Maxwell Church. It's an Adventist church, and a lot was said, and different people gave, different views about the late Honorable Simeon Nyachae. And one of those who spoke was the Cabinet Secretary for the Interior, my Director Wilson. You could get that. Cabinet Secretary for the Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, spoke about the impact that he had when he had the education factor in Kisii County. He said the late Simeon Nyachae invested a lot in the education of the people of Kisii County. Let's get that clip. All right. Okay, we will be getting those pictures. We've received that information from our directors who will be talking about it. But for somebody like the Honorable Simeon Nyachae, one of the things I still remember from that funeral service was the former Vice President, Honorable Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, saying that at times provincial commissioners would stand up. Members of the cabinet, when he was Chief Secretary, would call him sir. What was the impact of this generation of administrators in society?
Well, I think let us also, to be very fair to Senator Haji, let us also look at the background of the historical background of Simeon Nyachae. I think he was born in 6th February 1932.
Yes.
And he died on 1st February 2021. That is a difference of 5 days in February. So his February month, he features a lot in his history. And of course, he left a wife called Grace Wamuyu. And Nyachae, there are few things we should highlight to our viewers, Wahome. First, he was a politician. Then he was an entrepreneur, businessman, a very, very successful businessman. And then he invested a lot. as you have said earlier, in education and in various issues. And then he became a cabinet secretary of finance. But his history goes way back in 1957 when he went to London to study for public administration. Then he came back. After 3 years, he came back in 1960, and that is the time Nyachae was made a chief secretary.
I mean, a DO first. First
DO,
a district officer, onto district commissioner.
And then he became the chief secretary in the service under the governments of two presidents, prominently the late Kenyatta and Daniel Arap Moi. And then he went also into politics. When he retired, actually, he went into politics. And Wahome, remember...
Okay, Major, let me just interrupt you because I want to take a look at that part. I mean, the aspect of his time in the public service when he was as a provincial administrator and later as a chief secretary. What kind of impact did that generation of administrators have on the country?
Wahome, let us also not forget a fact of history. You know, we had already transited from the colonial regime.
Yeah.
And these people, both, even Haji and him, were the people who had an advantage of education. And being trained in the British country, they had what we called working ethos. So he brought they brought in a very young public administration. You understand? And they were very, very good. They laid the foundation for public service in our country.
So that foundation over time, you know, at that time, provincial commissioners, district commissioners were heavily respected people. Then what, over the years, then do we need to know, in today's world where there are a lot of civil liberties, people have a different view of who should be in charge. What is it that we can learn from, say, like the late Senator Haji and the late Simeon Nyachae?
I think the best comment is to understand, in our view, that they came in with discipline. Discipline in terms of knowing to do the right thing at the right time. At the same time, trying to serve the people during that time. And the virtues that helped them was integrity, loyalty, and knowing how to serve the people. Because we had transited from the colonial times. Wahome, these people, the senior politicians during that time, they came with one aim: to serve their own citizens, whom they had transited from the colonial time. And that is what the young public administrators should emulate these days. But they have already gone off the course because of corruption. They don't invest in time management, in people resources. They are doing things which are contrary to the seniors of public administration who laid firm foundation for civil service in this country.
Well, you worked in an institution where time is sacred, integrity and loyalty are sacred. What are these things that people need to learn now? Because I know in the 90s, you know, when, you know, the clamor for multi-party democracy came, democracy and, you know, something close to anything goes is what became part of our lives, Major.
Wahome, I think I would get a lesson from my profession. I'm a teacher by profession, and I've worked in the military for about 35 years. One thing which this country should follow, and I think Uhuru Kenyatta is doing it because he's getting people, he has a lot of trust of senior military leaders into the public service, like we have seen in with the General Badi. And one thing which make people from the military very effective and very efficient is one word only, Wahome, which is discipline. Discipline not in terms of fearing your seniors, but discipline in terms of doing the right thing during the right time, knowing how to manage the resources, and specifically time. Time is a very good resource when you want to manage the country. So I would say that they also worked in tandem with the utilization of time and discipline. And that's why Nyachae, both of them, managed the civil service, which had so many people. I think even now, Wahome, you'll agree with me that public service employs very many of our citizens.
Oh, yes, it's very true, Major, because if we were to talk about the number of people employed by the government, if you count the teachers, that's the only the Teacher Service Commission, that's the only other institution that would beat, the Public Service Commission for numbers. And the others now would be the National Police Service Commission and also the Kenya Defence Forces. And for the late Simeon Nyachae, when he got into politics, he was appointed a cabinet minister, and he did something that was, kind of unusual, and that was around 23 years ago in 1998. He went and said that the country is broke when he was the Minister for Finance. And later he was moved to the Ministry of, as a Minister for Industry, considered it a demotion and left. At that time when the late late Maj.Rtd was a president, it was almost, impossible to believe it had happened.
And I'll tell you one virtue of these two gentlemen. They were very candid. They would speak their mind openly, without fear of wisdom. Remember, Moi during that time, he was a very powerful person. He would bring you up like he brought late Professor Saitoti, and he could also, during lunch hour, 1 p.m. bulletin.
Oh, the 1 p.m. bulletin on VOK was feared.
Was feared, But I think Nyachae was very candid. And what happened with Nyachae, and I'll prove that he was very candid and he was very honest with his conscience. There's a time he was transferred from his ministerial portfolio to the less Ministry of, I think, Industry.
Yes.
And he said no. And he parted ways with Moi. And remember, Wahome, Moi was very powerful. To tell him no, or to give him other views that he was not for it was very dangerous. But he stood up and said no. And that is the time now he ventured into politics. He was very candid, was very honest. He's a man who should remember that he followed his conscience to the end.
The question is now, with a lot of loyalty, being demanded of at the place of work, also when it comes, even within the political spaces within this country, then how does somebody act in a candid manner and at the same time not get punished, for saying for speaking out the truth?
Well, there's one thing that we as a human being, we should follow. But because of our environment, we disregard it. Honesty and good honesty and remaining to yourself, true to yourself. That is what makes a leader. Unlike these leaders from the generation of Simeon Nyachae and the others, we have leaders who are only money-minded and their positions. But those leaders, earlier leaders that we are emulating today, those leaders had one heart, Wahome, serving the people. But the leaders we're having today, it is not the people, it is money. They have what we call self-interest at heart. They have forgotten the Wanjiku out there, whoever they are, and mostly they are politicians. If only they could emulate our nationalists. And I'm telling you, Wahome, these leaders who are going away because of their 80s, their age, because they must pass on, they were good leaders. They were nationalists, and they had the country at heart.
Now, there is also another factor where you mentioned about nationalism. This is where you feel, I am a Kenyan, I need to protect Kenya. What are the lessons that people should know so that, at times you will hear people, make their complaints about, saying, like the famous phrase, serikali's idea. How then do we get into full nationalism?
I'm telling you, Wahome, if we look at our country, it is better placed. The leaders that we had from Jomo Kenyatta, Moi, they did a lot to unify the country. But it reached a place where our politicians, rather than being nationalists, they forgot about nationalism, they went for money. You understand that? And that is where things went wrong. But a good citizen should put the country first than the interest of himself, the community. And then there is another disease which came in soon after these elders went away, that tribalism. Tribalism has really penetrated to our society to the extent that I will never look at you, Wahome, as a Kenyan, but a Kikuyu. This is what is driving this country backwards. And most of our politicians these days are carried out by the tribalism, the self-interest of money, getting quick wealthy, not being trusted. They always lie to Wanjiku, and we're having these scenarios which we're having today. And a lot of noise is having today, politically actually.
And when you mention about our politicians, and this is happening in Kisii County, and the message that has been put out to the politicians is that 2 weeks ago, at a funeral, 2 elected members of parliament fought when speaking at somebody's funeral. The question then is to our political class, when do we take the moment to remember that in as much as this is a funeral service, you've been given an opportunity to speak, you have to remember that there is a family in mourning.
We have, on our Wahome, we have the Constitution, which of 2010. It has a whole chapter of integrity. I think it's chapter 6, isn't
Chapter
it?
6.
Chapter 6, integrity. Our leaders have forgotten about integrity. Wahome, how do you go in a funeral where people are mourning, you are going to condole the family, and you start fighting? We have a crop of politicians who have forgotten who they are. And I think Wahome, they should not be called Waheshimiwas. We should have another word for them. They're not Waheshimiwas. Why should you go in the forward and start fighting there? They are not controlling their emotions. They are not leaders. They're not supposed to be leaders. And I wonder when we shall come to a stage where our politicians will be gauged by their own actions. But the mistake, Wahome, is ourselves. When you go to the vote and the Wahome gives me money, I don't care if Wahome can kill me, if Wahome can steal my money, if Wahome can do anything. So long as you give me money, then Wahome is a good leader in my eyes.
Something else that came up, and this was on Thursday at the funeral service, there was Engineer Wambura. He's a former permanent secretary. He served with the late Simeon Nyachae when he was Minister for Agriculture. He was a permanent secretary for Agriculture, and there was a program known as, the district focus. So they worked for rural development. 7 districts they were involved in, and he said the monitoring and evaluation of those projects was always on time, and they made sure that it happened. That is a precursor to what we have as devolution today. The question then is, bridging the old ways and the new ways without necessarily having, putting new wine in an old wineskin.
We have a change of history. Remember, we were used to the form of central government. And then, thank to God that we had the Constitution of 2010, which brought in devolution. Now, where all resources should go to the counties. The problem is, Wahome, devolution is a very good baby. But the way it is managed by the leaders we have also politically elected, mostly governors, the way they have managed the resources is a question. It's very questionable. I'm telling you, if we scrutinize all the governors of the 47 counties, Wahome, I think we shall get half of them. Not half of them, I don't know who. The other time, you people in the media, you are bringing in Professor Kivuda as one of the most governor who has done a bit better. But most of them, to my view, they have mismanaged the resources, which should have been the pillar of the devolution, so that the Mwananchi in the rural gets all-round development that he needs in terms of roads, in terms of education, in terms of health care, but they have mismanaged. Maybe in the second time, we shall have governors who will have Wanjiku at heart.
Well, we're speaking with Maj.Rtd Peter Mwathi. He is a former soldier, has been in administration, in the military. His rank at the time of leaving of office says that. And the pictures that you are seeing are from the Gusii Stadium, where we're going to be joining our team that is there. Our reporter there is Chola Simon. He is at the Gusii Stadium together with our team. And this is the funeral service for the late Honorable Simeon Nyachae. He passed on the 1st of February. That was 2 weeks ago when receiving treatment at the Nairobi hospital, and then he will be buried at his Nyosia home. It's going to be a private ceremony. President Uhuru Kenyatta is amongst those who are going to be in attendance for this funeral service. And we are taking a look at the legacy of the late Simeon Nyachae. And also this morning, we got news that also former provincial commissioner, former cabinet minister, and at the time of his death, he was senator for Garissa and co-chair of the Building Bridges Initiative Task Force, Mohammed Yusuf Haji, also passed on when receiving treatment here in Nairobi. And the burial is expected to take place this evening at the Langata Muslim Cemetery, and that is after the 4 o'clock prayers. And on the pictures now, we can see that President Uhuru Kenyatta is arriving at the Gusii Stadium, the motorcade, and you can see the activity as President Uhuru Kenyatta makes his way to where the funeral service for the late Simeon Nyachae is going to be taking place. He is amongst the mourners who are there. He did condole with the family last week on Wednesday, and now he joined them for the final rite of the late Simeon Nyachae. Remember that this is the public funeral service. It was supposed to take place at Nyonturuga Primary School, but was moved to the Gusii Stadium so that there could be proper application of the COVID-19 protocols at this funeral service. And President Uhuru Kenyatta now making his way to the tent where the funeral service is taking place, and together with his entourage, meet with the family of the late Simeon Nyachae, and they all make their way inside the tent. And so the funeral service will now start. Accompanying him is the Cabinet Secretary for the Interior, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, who is amongst the people who were mentored by the late Honorable Simeon Nyachae. And now we join our team that is at the Gusii Stadium for the funeral service of the late Simeon Nyachae. And as I leave, I want to say thank you very much to Maj.Rtd Peter Mwathi, who's been telling us about the legacy of the late Yusuf Haji and the late Simeon Nyachae.
Wahome, sorry, can I have a parting shot?
Yeah, a quick one, because we've now have to go over and join the service.
I think what we should emulate our leaders is President Uhuru Kenyatta is our leader. I think the political heat that we're having now, the best thing for him to do is to call his vice president, call Raila, 3 of them sit down and talk and chat the way forward, so as we can remember.
Let's remain standing for prayer.
Our Father and our God, we are indeed grateful for such a privilege you have given us to come before you. Thank you for this ceremony of Honorable Rate Simeon Nyachae. Now we are before your presence. We want to listen to your word as it is spoken to by your servant. Lord, I dedicate the whole congregation which is before us, before you, that your Spirit may guide each one of us, that during this celebration, Lord, all of us, we may behold you, the King of Kings, the King of the universe. Speak to us, Lord, and let us listen to your voice now, for we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Be seated. His Excellency, the President, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, and all protocols observed. Good morning, everybody. We want to invite you to church service this morning as we continue with this program to console the demise of our hero. This moment, we wish to begin the program, and officiating here, I'll not take time to introduce them, but we have Bishop Mairura is there with us, and many more pastors. We have Pastor Henry Nyamwanda, we have Pastor Tom Kennedy Miyenda, and Pastor Paul Kiage, the President of South Kenya Conference, who prayed. And from here, we want to invite the choir of Nyonsia to sing one song. Then from there, the program shall continue. And I will invite Pastor thereafter, Tom Kennedy Miyenda, to bring the officiating pastor. And that is after we have had the eulogy from Maj Nyachae. Thank you so much. Let's wait as the choir sings.
Umetusumbua, umetusumbua wote wanaotupenda.